Every pony staying at the Sugar Cube Corner tonight!
Pinkie Pie exclaimed after taking a bite. She had eaten the treat, perfectly fresh and baked. It tastes so good, her tummy nearly ached. Around her home, all her friends sat as she hopped. 5 mares, 3 fillies, and a dragon who talked. Smartest among them was a unicorn, you see, her coat quite lavender and her face full of glee. Her name, Twilight Sparkle, her cutie mark, a star. A pony could pick her out from any distance afar. She was happy because, as she had to confess, it was Hearth's-warming Eve and their night a success. They had put on a play, a tradition of sorts, one that was seen by the princess's courts. Important it was, for it showed quite a plight, the founding of Equestria, their homeland. All right!
All complications aside, the play went really well,
Twilight admitted as her smile began to swell.
We really learned some things about putting our differences aside. It almost didn't happen. If it hadn't, I would have cried.
And now we can enjoy the rest of the eve!
Pinkie Pie said excitedly. Then she rolled out a cart filled with teacups of tea.
Not for too much longer, I think, though I thank you for the spread. Some certain fillies I know need to go to bed,
Applejack said quite warmly, her southern accent thick as it was normally. Her sister Applebloom looked at her in hope. She knew how to work this. She was no dope.
Can't we stay up for a while instead? It's way too early to go to bed.
That's right! It's not late yet. We won't get tired, I'm willing to bet. It is not about getting tired,
Rarity said quite pleasant.
If you don't go to bed, Santa Hooves won't leave any presents.
No presents? Oh no!
Sweetie Belle said with a start.
I'll go to bed. I want those crayons of oh so colorful art.
And I want my new scooter!
Scoot shouted with conviction.
And my loop-de-hoop.
Applebloom encountered in poor diction.
Then you better get going and not make a peep. Santa won't come if you are not asleep.
The 3 fillies galloped to the room up above, uncharacteristically quiet as a dove. And when Rarity checked on them later that night, the fillies slept in their blankets, all snuggled and tight.
What about you, Spike?
Twilight asked the baby dragon.
You look as tired as an old retired wagon.
I guess. I wouldn't want to miss out on presents either.
Spike yawned and blew smoke, typical of a fire breather.
Just make sure we don't get a repeat of your birthday.
To that, Spike waved a claw in dismissive display. Then he grabbed up a pillow and went up the stairs to curl into a blanket that may have been there. He moved at the pace of an old dingy freighter, for he knew the basket belonged to a baby alligator. Twilight giggled, watching him split.
This is so nostalgic, I must admit. It reminds me of the excitement I would achieve when turning in early on Hearth's-warming Eve.
Then onward to bed we should also move if we want to get presents from old Santa Hooves,
Pinkie said, downing the remains of her tea. Then Twilight laughed at her jokingly.
Oh, come on, Pinkie Pie. First it was trick or treat, and now Santa Hooves too? You don't miss a beat. Believing in Santa Hooves is one thing, I'm sure, for which you are far too old and mature.
Both Twilight and Pinkie laughed in delight. Eventually they slowed to a chuckle so light.
That's a good one, Twilight. Too old to believe? I almost thought you were serious. I almost heaved.
But Twilight just stared. She had not been joking. What's with this new nonsense Pinkie was provoking?
You mean you really do believe in that?
Twilight asked, sounding quite flat.
You mean you don't?
Fluttershy spoke up in surprise, making Twilight look at her with very wide eyes.
Fluttershy? Don't tell me you do too!
Of course I do, Twilight. Why don't you?
You two can't be serious.
Twilight wanted to laugh and shout, but the blank stare she received just made her doubt. Her friends didn't know she had to break through.
No pony has ever told you? Told them what?
Rarity asked askance.
Do you know something we don't, perchance? You too? Santa Hooves isn't real. This must be a misprint. What? It's impossible! Of course he's real!
Rainbow Dash protested with some very strong zeal.
He's the only one who might be as cool as me, especially delivering toys to every good pony. Who else do you know that can make such a zip? To fly all over Equestria in one single trip. Even I couldn't do that, and I'm quite awesome. Santa's not a slouch like an old retired possum. That's because no pony could do that in a single night. Equestria is too big. It defies science, alright?
That's 'cause Santa is special.
Applejack said in reliance.
He's as old as the princesses. He don't need science.
Are you saying Santa is an alicorn then? You must be wrong. No other but the princesses can live that long.
Magic keeps him alive, Twi, as sure as can be. That's what the legends say. Y'all can trust me.
And that's all he is, a legend. There's no such being. Santa is nothing more than a tale. Why aren't you agreeing?
What makes you think he's not real?
Fluttershy asked, though it came out a squeal.
Because I saw it myself.
Twilight said, with more emotion than she meant. She remembered it like it was yesterday, that day of lament. She used to believe in Santa Hooves. She remembered it well, when she used to get excited for Santa's charming spell. She'd wait for him to come to bring her a present, up until that one year that was ever so unpleasant.
It was my very first heartwarming since coming to Canterlot, the same year I became Celestia's personal protege as a tot. At that time of year, all the students from the school spend the night in the castle, which was real cool. I, of course, was one of the youngest by far, and couldn't wait for Santa Hooves to come from afar. Somehow, I ended up falling asleep kind of early. That's probably why I woke up in the middle of the night, almost surely. I got up to go to the bathroom from the glow of candlelight, then heard the grandfather clock in the hallway strike midnight. I realized that Santa Hooves must have been there. So I ran to the parlor way down the stair. And who should I see by the fiery glow? Not Santa Hooves, but some pony I didn't know.
It had been one of the worst moments in Twilight's life. Even now, it still filled her with horrible strife. When she made it to the parlor, she spied a servant. She had hidden under a table to remain observant, but what she saw had changed her whole perspective.
I couldn't believe my eyes! I thought they were being deceptive. The servant was sending presents out for every pony. When he finished, I saw a present that was just for me. What I found next, my point disproves. The tag on the present read, "From Santa Hooves."
Twilight's friends all gasped in a unified fright. They could imagine it must have been a traumatizing sight. Twilight didn't know when her eyes started to get wet. The memory, it seemed, filled her heart with regret.
I stayed up the entire rest of the night, praying that Santa would come and make everything right. But in the end, he never showed.
Twilight was silent. That was all she would unload.
I'm so sorry such a horrible thing happened.
Rarity responded, feeling quite saddened. Then she said, rather daunted,
Did you not receive the present you wanted? Well, actually...
Twilight blushed. The letter she'd written to Santa was very hushed. She never told any pony what it read. Not even Princess Celestia knew what it said. Yet after crying in Celestia's hooves for an hour, and her feelings had all but gone sour, all the while wishing Santa had come to call, she opened her present and beheld her Smarty Pants doll.
I love my dear present all the same, but heartwarming and Santa had lost their claim. Never again would I have the excitement of my youth. It had been that way since I discovered the truth.
Then Applejack approached her, her voice very strong.
It's okay, Twi. I know what went wrong.
Twilight was astonished. What the heck was she saying? What went wrong? Surely she was playing.
Canterlot Castle is a big old place. They must set the presents out just in case. I bet it's almost impossible for every pony to be sleeping. When Santa Hooves comes to call, no pony can be creeping.
Wait, what? What are you talking about?
Twilight exclaimed, not meaning to shout. Pinkie Pie said with a very loud giggle.
Every pony knows he won't show if a pony tries to mingle.
Twilight stared at her friends as they all nodded in sync. It made perfect sense to them, especially the one in pink.
He doesn't show up because he's not real.
Twilight was mad. What was their deal?
No, silly. I assure you he's not a fake. He didn't show because you were awake.
Do you even realize the serious flaw in your logic? That proves he's not real. The error is cosmic. How so?
Rarity asked with a confident air, sounding as sure as a curl in her hair.
Don't you get it? It's just a convenient excuse. It makes no sense. Allow me to deduce. No pony has ever seen him because they're not awake, and supposedly he does otherwise? That is fake. Do you understand now?
Twilight said, feeling bugged. Her friends looked at each other, and then they all shrugged.
How exactly does that prove he doesn't exist? It could also mean the opposite, I must insist.
He knows when you're awake. He always does.
Pinkie Pie put in, her voice all abuzz.
And how do you know that?
Twilight said, continuing the spat.
If he didn't, then we would have seen him by now.
Fluttershy said, with a wrinkle of her brow.
Well, why doesn't he want to be seen? Can you answer that? Come clean.
Because he's modest.
Applejack answered, easily as that.
And because he's smart, like a whip or a cat. Think about it, Twi. Every pony loves Santa. Ponies love him like a beach house cabana. Remember when we dressed as Mayor Do-Well? How about Fluttershy's modeling swell? It's the same thing. If everyone knew how he looked, he'd never be left alone. His goose would be cooked. Santa don't need all that crazy attention. He don't want it neither. Does that calm your dissension?
Drat. They actually put up a good defense. It was hard for Twilight to keep up her descendants. Maybe if she refuted Santa from a different angle, there had to be something else for her to tangle.
You say he has magic. It's something you've sworn. But that would make Santa a normal unicorn. But I am one too, and well versed in magic. And that is why your argument is quite tragic. I'm certain there is no spell that can extend your life. Otherwise all unicorns would learn it and be quite rife. You cannot say you know every spell in the know.
Rarity said as her horn began to glow.
Santa is so old, he must know plenty of tricks. Even some spells I'm sure you've never mixed.
Twilight had to admit it was a reasonable doubt, but she wouldn't give up. There were more flaws about.
What about the reindeer? Reindeer don't fly. And don't try to tell me it's because Santa is sly.
Have you ever seen a reindeer?
Applejack asked.
Well, not outside a book.
Twilight started, feeling abashed.
But I don't need to see them, it's all in the cards. No books claim they can fly, not a single one regards. Have you ever read one that says he can't?
Rainbow protested. Twilight thought, feeling her knowledge of reindeer tested. It wasn't like she had read much on the notion, but the few she knew did not deny the promotion.
You don't have an answer, therefore you can't say. You cannot deny our claim this day.
Rarity said with grace and finality, but then Fluttershy continued very quietly.
Besides, he probably uses his magic to make the reindeer fly. Even you know that's possible. He put Rarity in the sky.
Of all the days they had to come up with a logical requital and make Twilight feel like a mule in the middle. Whatever happened to the simpler times when they thought Sakura evil with wicked rhymes? And for no more reason than how she appeared, it was all they needed for the zebra to be feared.
I know you had a bad experience as a filly, but we all know Santa is real, you silly. We're your friends, so why don't you believe us?
Pinkie Pie asked her, her voice quite grievous. But Twilight couldn't believe them. It had been ingrained in her brain. She knew the truth from that day that had caused her great pain. Santa was a fraud. She knew it with a stain. There was just no way there could be any such thing.
Mrs. Cake!
Twilight called into the other room. Then the older mare came in after putting down her broom.
Tell them, Mrs. Cake, and don't sugarcoat the ordeal. No pony ever told them that Santa Hooves isn't real.
The look on Twilight's face was really quite smug. knowing her explanation would sweep them under the rug.
Of course Santa is real.
Mrs. Cake said, quite aloof. Twilight felt smacked by an invisible hoof.
Mrs. Cake, don't baby them. We're all adults here. Tell them the truth. Make everything clear.
But Mrs. Cake shook her head in dismay. It was clear that she would not allay.
I don't know what you're talking about. Why is it that in Santa you have such doubt?
Twilight face-hoofed, feeling something was amiss. How could Mrs. Cake treat them like this?
It's okay, Mrs. Cake. Twilight just needs some proof.
Pinkie Pie said casually as she licked tea off her hoof.
Come on, Airy Pony. Let's hit the hay. When Twilight sees the presents, she won't be so gray.
Twilight wanted to refute some more and tell Pinkie what was really in store. But her friends all agreed and seemed without cares and cleaned up the room before going upstairs. Twilight felt in her eyes a horrible stain. How could her friends believe in such a thing? Later that night, when the clock struck 10, Twilight lay awake. What a mess she was in! What her friends believed, Twilight just couldn't take. Santa Hooves was real? It must be a mistake.
This is ridiculous.
Twilight whispered with a huff.
Why do they believe in such silly old stuff? I should be able to prove it logically. Santa's not real. He's nothing but a folly.
Twilight thought while her friends slept. Mrs. Cake must be lying. Does she think she's inept?
I can't just stay up because Santa won't show. But if I don't, how'll I ever know? There must be a way to prove this theory of mine. I don't want to be seen as a crazy equine.
Twilight stopped. That train of thought wasn't working. How could she catch Santa while he was or wasn't lurking? If any pony else was awake, then would prove the opposite. What she wanted at least, then that wouldn't be adequate. She would have to prove it by herself. But how? Twilight tried to think. She furrowed her brow. There had to be a loophole somewhere. There must be a hole, even as small as a hair.
There must be a contradiction to the conventional way.
She would just have to think of a different relay. Oddly enough, her French rebuttals made sense, giving Santa a rock-solid alibi in defense. He was modest and thus didn't want to be seen, using foresight to slip through cracks in between. He used unicorn magic to get down chimneys and also to fly his reindeer to various cities. It was possible that Santa was not one, but many. But that would be admitting he existed, making Twilight a ninny. After all, she had witnessed the feign. Even though her friends had managed to explain, they had effectively debunked her testimony and given good reason to why Santa was a real pony. And all because there were too many awake on that date. Too many for Santa to show. But wait.
When Santa Hooves comes to call, no pony can be creeping.
That's how Applejack explained why everyone must be sleeping. That meant some pony in the house.
That's it!
Twilight said, quiet as a mouse. So Twilight left Shirikyu Corner and went to the neighbor, who answered the door as a holiday favor. Twilight went up the stairs, quick as can be. She had less than 2 hours left, you see. From her saddlebag, she pulled her binoculars out to spy on Shirikyu Corner and see Santa about. If Santa didn't show if you were awake inside, then there was only one place for a pony to hide. That was silly, however, as of course he wouldn't show. He wasn't real. Twilight knew that to be so. Twilight was going to prove it by watching. When he didn't show, the argument she would be squashing. It was the perfect plan. Every pony would believe her then. Her friends would never doubt her sound judgment again. Twilight turned when she heard a pony walk into the room. 'Twas the neighbor that illuminated that upstairs gloom. I brought an extra blanket. Are you sure you want to stay? It gets awfully cold up here, I must convey. The owner of the house was Carrot Golden Harvest Top, a pony with fizzy hair like orange soda pop.
It's all right. I'll be fine.
Twilight was kind to incline.
Thank you again for being a mate. I'm sorry I came to call so late.
Carrot raised her hoof high. It's no problem, all right? It's Hearthwarming Eve. How could I say no tonight? Hearthwarming really was the best holiday. Every pony always seemed so much closer and purvey. Twilight returned to her Santa watch, nestling into the blanket Carrot had bought. After a few moments, Carrot interrupted her again. Are you going to go to bed soon? It's way after 10.
No, that's fine. I don't plan on going to bed. I'm going to stay up to midnight instead.
But if you don't go to sleep, then Santa won't come, Carrot said slowly, looking rather glum. Twilight lowered her binoculars and looked quite askew.
Don't tell me you believe in Santa Hooves too.
You mean you don't? It was the same as Fluttershy. Carrot was still smiling, though she looked in her eye. Every pony believes in Santa. How about you? This couldn't be right. Carrot believed the impossible too. Was Twilight really alone in this? The only one who was in remiss? Twilight packed her binoculars in sudden dismay. There was no reason to ruin someone else's holiday. Wait, are you going outside? Carrot asked as Twilight started in stride.
Happy Hearthwarming Eve and all days about.
Twilight replied and made her way out. She was almost there when Carrot beat her to the door and set something surprising down on the floor. Here, take these with you, for it's cold and addle. Carrot had laid 2 pairs of boots, a scarf, and a warm fleece saddle.
But aren't these yours? Why give them to me?
Twilight was shocked to see Carrot light up with glee. You can stay if you want. Presents aren't everything. I'll even stay up. We can talk or even sing. Twilight was speechless. She had not expected this. She thought everyone believed in Santa for the gifts. Was there something she had been missing all these years? The gesture, it seemed, nearly moved her to tears.
It's all right. I don't want to keep you from Santa's charm. And don't worry about the cold. I can stay warm.
If you're not going to stay, then I insist you take these. Do not underestimate the cold winter breeze. Twilight realized she wasn't in a position to say no. Carrot was genuinely worried about her being in the snow, just like her friends might be if they knew she was in peril. Thanking Carrot with a hug, Twilight donned her new apparel. It was cold outside, there was no denying, but Carrot's gift helped, so she continued her spying. Twilight settled down into a quiet street corner and raised her binoculars as snow fell around her. No sign yet of anything, of course. Nothing about but a small purple horse. Only an hour or so left to sit in the cold, when Twilight would see, well, nothing to behold. But somewhere along the way, her eyes began to close. Before she even knew it, Twilight started to doze. She didn't know how long or when into sleep she delved, but she was awake by the city clock striking 12. She rubbed her eyes, hoping she hadn't missed a thing. Then she shivered a bit, realizing that the cold had a sting. There was no way any pony would be out in such freezing weather. Twilight silently wished she was still with her friends all together. She shook off the falling snow that had accumulated, and wondered then just how long she had waited. But then, something caught her eye on the roof. It looked like a pony. Had her eyes began to goof? Twilight did a double take. Some pony was on the roof, you see. She could just make out the shadow. Could it be? There was only one logical answer. Only one logical end.
It must be a burglar.
Twilight's mind decided to append. Twilight watched the figure move around the chimney. He must have been taking advantage of the Santa Hooves mystery. What nerve he had to go to Holmes just to rob. Well, he wasn't going to get away with Twilight Sparkle on the job. Twilight winked up there, preparing to surprise the fiend. But it seemed he found somewhere else to convene. What the hey happened? Where did he go? Then she spied some tracks in the snow. He had headed to the chimney, of that she was sure. Had he tried to go down instead of using the door? No pony would go that far. He could have been stuck. If he hadn't, then it would be just Twilight's luck. Twilight was just about to wink out again, to see if the burglar would come out from within. But then she noticed something she hadn't before. A sleigh? And still, there was so much more. A team of reindeer? And 8 of them too? This was far too elaborate, even for a thief to pursue.
This is beyond reason,
thought the lavender mare. How did he even get them all up here? She was startled by magic that was shaped like a spear. The magic grew dim and began to subside, and transformed to a pony with a snowy white hide. He was dressed all in red from his mane to his hoof, and when he saw Twilight, he paused on the roof. The saddlebag of toys that hung elegantly from his back were emblazoned with mistletoe like a green minty snack. Yet almost immediately, Twilight's mouth hung in surprise, for his mane that elegantly flowed betrayed his true guise. Not a he, but a she, the young unicorn was quite sure. And as soon as she realized, she froze to her core.
Princess Celestia?
Twilight said with a shock. What was she doing out so late at the clock? Celestia looked just as surprised as Twilight felt. What in equestrian was going on? Her brain was going to melt.
Twilight Sparkle? Every pony's asleep in the house. Not a creature was stirring, not even a mouse. The spell I wove cancels out all sound. How did you know where I was to be found?
Twilight slowly recovered from her surprise and pointed.
Down there. I was waiting for Santa Hooves to point.
Twilight stopped with her mouth quite agape. She had just admitted to her true goal's shape. Celestia slowly smiled. She now understood. Twilight had wanted to see the pony in the red hood.
I guess I was bound to be caught eventually. Surprisingly, I've never been seen in all these centuries. You're the first pony to ever see me from outside. You might even be the first pony who has tried.
Really? But see her doing what? Twilight now had a strange feeling in her gut.
I'm so glad it was just you, though. Had it been another, 'twould be quite a blow.
But I don't understand. What do you mean? Princess Celestia, what exactly have I seen?
Once again, surprise overcame Celestia's face. In her voice, sarcasm. There was not a trace.
You mean you didn't know?
She said, very sad and slow.
What happened to Santa Hooves then?
Twilight asked in confusion. She needed to know. What was the conclusion?
I am Santa Hooves,
Celestia said calmly, her eyes shining ever so warmly. Twilight's eyes widened. She felt so confused. Sensing that she had said something odd, Celestia bemused.
What I mean to say is that I have been Santa since the beginning.
Celestia spoke calmly and smoothly while grinning.
What? Huh?
Santa Hooves was real? And he was Princess Celestia? What a huge deal!
I'm sorry I never told you, Twilight. I thought you knew. Especially after that incident in Canterlot. I felt like a shrew.
You actually remember that?
Twilight asked, feeling as if she had been a brat.
Of course I do. You were so upset. I'd assumed you'd figured it out, but I guess I lost that bet.
Celestia shook her head as if she thought it was amusing. Twilight didn't think so. She had been fuming. All those years feeling crushed and let down. That Santa Hooves was real? Now she felt like a clown. She had lied to herself for years in the past. If only she had the courage and just asked.
I just don't understand, Princess. I have to ask why. Why Santa Hooves? Why be so shy?
It's really quite a story, actually. Once I tell it, then you will see. Centuries ago, when Equestria was founded, I wanted to think every pony with feelings abounded. So my sister and I thought up this scheme to surprise them with gifts on the anniversary of our esteem. Since I needed assistance to do this chore, I enlisted the help of 2 reindeer times 4. Since it would be easier to travel by sky, I gave them the ability to temporarily fly. We also built a sleigh that would act as the hauler, and painted it red because it was my favorite color. When the night finally came, it was frightfully cold, so I put on a red coat of mine that was really quite old. I didn't think about any pony catching me being a concern, so after the deed was complete, there were stories to discern. All around Equestria, there were rumors that spread, all about a mysterious pony in red. He had been seen descending from the sky and leaving gifts behind, though no pony knew why.
Celestia giggled as she finished the tale.
And that's how the legend of Santa Hooves began to avail. It was just an accident, you see, but one that brought joy to every pony. It was such a popular notion and brought so much cheer that I decided to do the same thing every year.
And that was why the yearly ride she did enforce, but under the guise of Santa Hooves, of course.
So that's it.
Twilight said slowly, though strangely she appeared rather lowly.
My goodness, Twilight, you look all affright. Is something wrong? Are you all right?
What about the castle? What about every pony there? What happened the year I found the truth I could not bear?
Celestia put a hoof around her faithful student and spoke calmly as well as prudent.
The servants and guards all know, but they're sworn not to tell. In fact, they make many of the gifts that I give as well. They wanted to be part of the gift-giving crew, so I let them give gifts in the castle too. I really am sorry you found out this way. Has it really hurt you as much as I dismay?
No, actually, everything is just fine. In the end, I wasn't exactly wrong, but I wasn't right either. And of course, I can't say that my friends were flawed either. There is, and is not a Santa Hooves. You and he are the same. And somehow, I'm fine with that. You are not to blame.
Twilight finally realized that she hadn't stayed up to prove her theory. Not exactly. Somewhere inside, she had actually been wary, even after all this time, since that terrible year. She still secretly prayed to see Santa and his awesome reindeer. Her whole Santa watch had been to deceive her own mind, in hopes that Santa was real and would show up and kind.
I'm glad to see that you are finally better. Perhaps you can tell me about it in a friendship letter. I still wish there was a way to make up for deceiving, even if it wasn't intentional to make you stop believing.
Then Celestia's face lit up with a sudden thought.
Come with me, Twilight Sparkle. It's the solution I've sought. I can't think of a better way to make up for my thrall than if you were to assist me in delivering the gifts to all.
Twilight stared at her mentor. Her? Help Santa deliver his mess? There was only one answer.
Yes, yes, yes!
Then put some gifts in your saddlebag, my faithful protege, and we'll be off to other ponies' homes. Away! Away!
Wait! I have one request I must address first. Do you have a new set of boots, a scarf, and a saddle to disperse? I want to give them to a good friend of mine. She gave me hers, and even consigned.
Celestia wrinkled her nose with a smile.
Of course. I always come prepared for any such trial.
Then she waved her horn with a magical glow, and everything Twilight had requested appeared with a bow. Twilight instantly winked into Carrot's room, toting with her the pony's new costume. Carrot was sleeping, of that there was not a doubt. Twilight grinned at her newest friend and simply winked out. Then she and Celestia moved around to the other ponies' houses, delivering gifts and toys to all of Ponyville's populaces. Through winking and magic, it was simple and quick. They had hit the whole town in a 20-minute trip. Then it was back to Sugarcube Corner, where the sleigh was still parked. There were still plenty of other places that were still to be barked. Twilight happily leapt into the sleigh. Then Celestia got in and had something to say.
Would you like to do the honors and take up the rein?
Twilight gleamed at Celestia as she were a filly again.
Can I really?
Twilight squealed in delight, and would have danced in place if she hadn't been sitting tight. Then she raised the reins and called out with conviction.
Now Dasher, now Dancer, now Prancer and Vixen!
Twilight, it was years ago that those reindeer were hired. I'm afraid that those reindeer have been long since retired.
Oh.
Twilight said, quite disappointed. The stories were outdated. Point noted.
What are these ones called?
She asked as Celestia whispered in her ear. Twilight looked at her in surprise. This was strange to hear. Taking a deep breath, Twilight raised the reins. Then she proceeded to call out the new reindeers' names.
Now Stanley, now Sandy, now Bosley and Mo, on Bumper, on Scooter, on Philly and Joe, to the top of the porch, to the top of the wall, now dash away, all!
And away they all flew like the down of a thistle. It was so exciting, Twilight wanted to whistle. When the morn finally came, to her friends she would go, to tell them of her adventure, minus truth, don't you know. For now she believed with all of her heart that Santa was real. She should have known from the start. Until then, there were presents galore that needed to be brought to every pony's door. And Twilight exclaimed as they flew out of sight.
Happy holidays to all, and to all ponies a good night.